Vandana is not only an amazing chapter leader, but she's also a colleague of us here at Sneak and looks after our security relations. So we're very excited for her to kick off our first session as well as our keynote session in APJ. So Vandana's going to be talking about getting to know the unknown space. But without further ado, Vandana, do you want to share your screen and we can get started with your session?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I'm so glad to be speaking at DevSecOn. This is one space which is very, very close to me because this is catering to the community work and so much more. A bit about myself: I'm a security relations leader at Sneak. And at my free time, I also contribute to the open source work. And I'm one of the global board of directors at Open Web Application Security Project, which is OWASP. Hmm, what is this? So, does this look like a futuristic image of something that we envision? I'm sure it does. Now, we have seen these pictures, right? Now, I've taken it up from social media, but think about it. This is actually the real life when someone is talking to a robot. But when that happens, there's so much more which is getting uploaded on any of the sites. Or maybe we think that it's getting uploaded somewhere safe and it's all okay. Hmm. But what happened if that upstream media gets compromised? Could there be a problem? Would there be an issue? Or there is a tracking which is happening, like someone hacks into it and tracks your every moment, whatever you say, whatever you speak, whatever you plan, everything is getting cracked. How scary that would sound. Now, here exactly when we talk about all of these scaring things, there's one important thing is that how developers play a very fundamental role in avoiding these incidents. Another important part is that how we should care about software security, software supply chain security. And when you are at DevSecOn, that means you care about software security because DevSecOn itself, the name says that yes, we need to talk about development and security. And as we talk about developer first security, we're going to be sharing more insights on how to secure your environment rather than just scare you off. Developers as a malware distribution vehicle. Have you ever thought of it that it could be any case? And there are many studies which shows that yes, there is a case. How? Wherein there was one incident wherein even stream incident which happened in 2018, but that actually did not started in 2018. It was a very very high impact spearheaded event wherein there were a lot of things which happened. So it existed since 2011. For a couple of years, there was no update that happened. Now, when that did not happen, but it gained actually a lot of downloads. Hmm. There is a even stream which is there. There is no update. There are a lot of downloads. Now suddenly there is someone who shows up and says that I'll help you out. You trust, okay, it's an open source community. You go ahead and help me out. There are a lot of pull requests which happens. People start updating it. And suddenly there is one thing which is malicious, which gets embedded as part of the whole registry and which goes into the GitHub. And that's get updated as a package. Now what happens next? Everyone starts downloading. Now what's the next thing? The latest version is actually the vulnerable version. Can you imagine the latest version is actually creating a chaos? So these things can happen. Now what it teaches us, how much do we know about our dependencies, how much do we actually uh, rely on all of these things? That's one very very important aspect here. Now think about how much of a code is our own code. We have an image of our application in our head that okay, this is our app. This is actually, we think that yes, this is the whole world that we have. which is fine. But in the whole world, this is the red dot is actually our code. But what is REST? The REST is actually the open source component which is there. Third party libraries to third party vendors to third party platforms that we use. So think about it's so much more that we are using externally. And the reality, when it hits us, then we need to look at the rest of the image as well. What happens when people start attacking the developer tooling? Can we imagine that? We use the developer tools day in and day out. Like I'm speaking from a security perspective, but developers, they use the IDE tools every day, every single day. And think about Visual Studio Code. If that has an issue, if there is a vulnerability in Visual Studio Code, how scary that would be, right? So in January 2021, like 2021, just this year, a security researcher found a bug in Microsoft Visual Studio Code, now essentially providing him the access or the capabilities of making code modification. Does that sound scary? I get scared with that. But then, what happened with that? Due to a command injection in that made possible with a valid attack vector. Now, simply you just need to make a new pull request. The researcher was able to execute code with the Visual Studio. Now, think about you are using Visual Studio Code or any IDE, and what we do is we always use certain extensions. Do we do that or not? We do that, right? Now, if we're using an older version of that, or an older version of an extension, and we feel like we don't want to keep it up to date, or uh, we want to update it maybe when maybe after a few weeks, after a few days. That happens a lot of times. Even when an update comes on a phone, I take couple of days to update it. Correct? That happens. But then that couple of days sometimes become weeks. That creates a problem then, because when there is a release of a patch, and after that you take time and then you update your patch, between that time there are so many things that can be done. And that has happened with many organizations. Those breaches have happened with many organizations. And that's when we talk about the state of open source security. This is the case with this is actually the classic case of markdown cross-site scripting vulnerability. Now, what you see on the screen, there was um, a vulnerability. Now, this vulnerability, there was one fix which was there, which was reported in 2015. But when was it fixed? 2016. Similarly, there were many cases, and this was a recent case which happened in 2020, wherein it was fixed in 2020. On top of it, if you remember this breach, which was one of the actual classic case which we still take an example of, the Equifax breach, the Apache Struts vulnerability. And who to blame for? No one. Who can we? Then the point comes that how it all started. It all started on February 14, and then it went on when there was a release of a fix, March 6th. Okay, March 7th, there was exploit available on the exploit DB. And after that, people started exploiting it. Everything is there. Now, it took months for organizations to update. Now, when this Equifax breach happened, everybody got scared. Everybody started checking which Apache version are we using. Oh, we are using Apache. Now, all of this thing made us realize that it is not just with Apache, it is not just with the Equifax, it is within our ecosystem. We have to make sure we understand our own ecosystem. We don't have the proper libraries. We don't have the proper libraries listed in our application library or CI/CD pipelines. read itself. I remember having sleepless nights making sure checking what Apache versions we are using, what applications are using Apache. Now, that happens with many organizations, or most of the organizations, if we do not maintain the right set of libraries. And what happens next? If we maintain that, the next point is making the right documentation with the right set of updates. I'll tell you one very simple thing. We have everything updated, but when we download something from the internet in our code, but we tend to miss out on updating our documentation, it is as good as not updating it. So remember, we need to detect all of these fast. We need to update our ecosystem. We need to respond to these things as it comes. And we need to do it for all of our applications. And this was the case with this. That if it takes 1 year to update one ecosystem, how critical that could be. And uh, this is how we have to take care of our ecosystem, our open source security, not just this. And now, while we talk about all of this, what happens if a maintainer's account get compromised? Like maintainer is maintaining so many libraries, so many registries, and if that gets compromised, that can be very tricky. So in 2017 there was a research which is conducted by the npmjs ecosystem, and they tried and figure out what happens. 14% of the credentials, people were using the weak credentials. Think of credentials. Do we have so many credentials? Oh, I have so many, like so many systems and then phone and whatnot, and then too many passwords. Is it easy to remember? No. Do I remember all of them? No. What do? I use a password manager. Now, do I use an insecure password? No. What do I do next? I use randomly generated passwords, and that's how I use my password manager, and then I have a big password. Why do I talk about it? It's like a password hygiene, but why do I talk about it here? Because we have so many passwords, we have to make sure that these passwords are secure. And on top of it, we shouldn't share it. It is like our personal hygiene. We use toothbrushes, right? Every morning, like it's morning time, and we have brushed our teeth, and uh, so passwords are like toothbrushes. When we don't share our toothbrush, why do we share our passwords? And we have to make them very secure. Like we cover our toothbrushes, we make sure that no one is using it, and it's safe at one place. Like it has to be very secure. Now, that wasn't enough. On top of it, these kind of vulnerabilities come in. Pseudo vulnerability. What happens with that pseudo vulnerability? Now, think about this utility, pseudo vulnerability, which has been there for a very, very long time, like 10 long years. We've been using it. And that suddenly it comes up in January 21 that this utility has issues. Wherein any privileged user can get root access if there is a default configuration. Okay, interesting. And this utility has been there, and we've been using it, and this flaw has been there for a very, very long time. Think of it, all of it is there, but then comes the supply chain attacks, which impacts everyone. All the things that I've been speaking about, there are things which are there are security issues that are there are things that we need to concentrate upon, but there is one important aspect that we need to look at, which actually is our own security, is our own custom code, is look at what we use at as part of our own code. Somebody says that you are using my code right now, I'm going to remove my hands off. And suddenly, after 2 days, this person pulls off his hand. What happens next? If you're trying to download, it doesn't work. What it teaches us that when you are using open source, use it responsibly, or try and take inspiration and then write certain libraries which are critical as your custom code and keep it up to date. When you're using custom code, that doesn't mean that you're 100% secure. We need to scan it, we need to update it, we need to fix it. That's the key behind it. And while we manifest all of these, while we understand all of this, we need to understand what registries we are pulling off, what registries we are using, what what exactly is inside in those registries. There could be malicious packages, there could be flaws which can impact the whole organization. And on top of it, what happens when it disrupts the whole ecosystem? Like, it just doesn't affect one ecosystem, it impacts many ecosystems, because one organization is actually deploying it but multiple people are using it. One person is deploying it, multiple organizations are using it. Think of this particular case wherein in March 2021 itself, like this year, I am actually quoting some of this year incidents wherein there were many malicious packages which were part of Python packages and part of PyPy registries, like over 3,000 packages. How many people or how many organizations would have downloaded it? Multiple. And even if one registry is vulnerable, that can impact the whole code. And if there are multiple registries which are vulnerable, hmm, that means how much vulnerable code what we would have, right? And that dependency confusion created a lot of chaos, not just for basic organizations, like small organizations. It impacted medium level organizations to the enterprises, and organizations like Apple, Microsoft, and many more organizations. Then are we going to have less or more softwares in the future? We are going to have more for sure. We're going to rely more on them. But then how about open source? Open source is actually going to stay here. It's actually come here to stay. We are getting more and more dependent on it. And if you remember the image that I showed you, how much of our code is our code? This much. And rest is our open source code because we love open source. If I talk about myself, I truly love open source. My own website is actually built on open source code. So let's try and hack our app. Now, let me go ahead and show you an app and then a dependency. Now, no, first our app. Now, let me go ahead and sign up here. So, this is just a basic to do list where I say my name, I say devsecon, I'll say devsecon at demo. Password is something which I'm not going to speak out, but always use a secure password. Now, what I want to do here, I want to create my to do list because we all live in a virtual world. We want to make sure that we remember things. So, we are going to create a to do list. But before that, let me go ahead and understand my account. What all things are there? What all features are available? I can create a to do list. Oh, I can upload files as well. And I can see my files. Interesting. Let me create a to do list. I'll say devsecon, due date December. Fine. I'll create as a priority medium. I'll create it interesting. That has been created. Now I'll create a to do list. Now this time I'll create it with a symbol. Now, generally, what happens, let's see how exactly my application behaves to it. Now I'll create it as a low priority. Interestingly, now the spy symbol has changed to an ASCII character. That means there is something which is happening in the background. Now, while I wear a hat of a security person or could be an attacker, now I try and understand more of this application. I know about home, but there is an about section. Now, here what we see that there is a home page, there's a license, there's struts, spring, hibernate. Interestingly, when we are checking any of our application, we don't tend to see all of this in the real world scenario. As it's a demo app and I'm trying to show you, I can see that. So here, this struts version, it's actually the same version which was used in the Equifax breach. Now, while you see that, that means there is an exploit which is available. And from a what you call it as a crazy mindset or an attacker mindset or like a security person mindset, you always think in the reverse way. So you say, okay, that means I can upload any of malicious content. So let me go ahead and upload something. Okay, no. I'll say goof. And here I can go ahead and could be upload something. And here I have my exploit. Now here it takes a zip file. Now I'm going to go ahead and upload a zip file. I uploaded my exploit, but it didn't show me anything. Now, if you remember, there was a remote code execution that happened there. Now, can I do any of the remote code execution here? Now, here, let me go ahead and write devsecon demo. This is this is my to-do list. I don't want 1970. I want 2021 and December 3rd. Let's put a different date. I'll mark it as, oh, what happened? It says, oh, something different happened. Let me create the to-do list again. Vandana is the hacker. No. Okay. 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 That's what I do all the time. Right. December 3rd. No, it does not. It does not accept. Okay. Say Vandana is not a hacker. Create again. Strangely, if you see that anything I write here, it's changing to the similar things. That means the code that I uploaded, the exploit that I uploaded, that is uploaded on the server side, and I could make the modification. So this is one very important aspect that if we are using older version of any sort of applications that can lead to many malicious content or that can actually lead to remote code execution to code modification on the server side, or maybe much more. Maybe we might be able to run command shell on the server side and make modification or can sniff or can do the wonders, right? Similarly, think of here I'm going to show you just a single dependency, what it can do. So here I'm going to run node index.js. Now, here, actually, let me go ahead and show you what it is. Now, while it's listening to port 3000, remember that. So here, I'm going to go ahead and show you my index.js. No. Let's not do it. So it's just a single script file, if you see here, right? Where I have the whole library, wherein I have an index, I'm sanitizing it, I'm escaping some characters, which is for cross-site scripting, right? There was one vulnerability which we found out. Now, if you see that it's all, I'm escaping it, it's escaping. But let's go ahead, when my server is running on that, let's try and exploit it. If it actually shows me, okay, let me go here. Now, let me show you something. Nothing happens. It's just the plain application. But here, just in case I add an array, what happens? Cross accepting happens. My sanitization doesn't work. Now, even if I double sanitize it, what happens? I keep adding all of this and it keep popping up, right? So this is actually dependency confusion or type confusion which happens. Now this was the case with one of our one of the Express.js, and I actually recorded this demo also because I wanted to make sure that this works. But sometimes demo god don't shower our blessings, shower their blessings. So I thought of recording it and showing it to you. But then here, while this is happening, there are multiple arrays that we can put in, and all of this, if you see here at the bottom, we can keep putting it in, like boxing it. We have multiple sanitization available, but then if we tend to miss out on keeping it within the array, then there could be a big problem. Or when we don't look at the type confusions, which can happen within the query. So here, this was one library, which was Express.js, which was a request or query as part of Express, which was actually creating this. Now, this actually calls for an update. And if we don't update these kind of dependencies on time, and if somebody figures it out, they could be a big issue, right? This seems to be like a small issue, like, oh, it's just one library which is there. But then it is actually a big one. It can lead to big issues in our own code, right? Similarly, when we are empowering our developers, that's not enough. We need to make sure we update the tooling as well. And on top of it, the dev environments need to be updated. And those are updated in such a way that even if we are sleeping, we can update them. We can fix the code there. Now, OWASP community. Now, why I'm talking about it here? This is an open source community, and we need to make sure we take help from the open source security communities as well. We contribute there. The most important aspect while we talk about all of this, from dependencies to application vulnerabilities, there are many victims which are there. Application security becomes challenging. Everyone says that. Why? Because we have one foot in the open source dependencies, other foot in the cloud native environments. And what if security was much easier, developer friendly, and actionable? And that's what I'm going to share. Best practices for open source security. You can actually look at Seek website. There are many open source security. You can go to OWASP cheat sheet series. There are so many wonderful cheat sheets available. And then open source is amazing, but let's use it responsibly. And then comes the most important part, Security Champions Program. Now, what it entails is that we need to make champions in the different teams. We need to make sure that we have focal point in the development teams, operations team. We are trying to scale the security. We are not boxing up the security, which we have been doing all our life, and improving oneself to be a better one in the whole space. Now, why I say that, when we have so many issues cropping up, can security take care of everything? No. Can we again sit in one room and fix everything? No, it is not possible. This is not the case anymore. And that's what we need to take care of. We need to take help from the developers. We need to take help from the operations team who are actually working on ground. And we need to make them as influencers. And not just that, we need to take executive sponsorship, make sure that they actually become part of the whole program and they support all of these security champions program. And not just this security champions program, but then we have to have clearly defined activities, that what people are going to do, what they're going to talk about, how exactly volunteer champions are going to work, how exactly security representation would be there. It's not just that we are making development teams or developers as security champions who are very enthusiastic about it, but then we need to support them, we need to enable them, we need to guide them, we need to be their mentors, and their responsibilities, because they have their day-to-day task as well. So how much of time they're going to spend on it, how much of time they're going to have, like cadences are good. I totally love that. And we have to have clearly defined how much time we're going to spend of it. 15 minutes a week, that's actually more than enough, trust me. It's, or even half an hour, like the max. But let's talk about it. If we have right project management, only half an hour is also enough, because we're going to talk on point. Who's going to handle what, how it's going to be handled, how it's going to be defined, where are the issues, how we need to concentrate, what are the new things which are coming up, all of this thing. And last but not the least, rewards and recognition. It is very, very important. Measurable goals. What does a security champion do? Incorporate good open source security, responsibility, taking responsibility, making sure that security issues are identified. Who can be a security champion? Anyone. Developer, operations people, DevOps manager, security analyst. And we need to motivate people to be a security champion. Thank you so much.